good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter which part of the world you are at. If you're watching this live, welcome. If you're watching this pre-recorded, again, welcome. Now, I have this beautiful, amazing lady with me, Yiyi Ku, and we've been wanting to come on live together for a couple of years now, but because of our time difference, it's been quite difficult and challenging in sense. But I'm so excited to have her on board. So welcome, Yiyi.
Thank you, Lorraine. It is Lorraine, right? Did I say it right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. Not at all.
Well,
Not at all.
it's an honor to be on your channel, and yeah, it's been difficult with my recent move back to New Zealand from California. So we finally figured out a time that
Yeah.
works both for both of us, I guess.
I know
But
it's
thank
it's
you
a
for
it's
the
a better
invitation.
time zone. Yeah, it's a better
Hmm.
time zone between New Zealand and Australia, although it was like 2 hours, was it? 3 hours, 2 hours.
I have no idea.
Anyway, it's closer. It's closer than the time zone over the other end of the world.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I'm excited to have you on board. Now, the reason why I first got in touch with you many years ago, man, it seems so long, was because I came across your student, as all of us would have, Cody Lee. But before we go
Uh-huh.
into the whole concept of this, today we're talking about teaching students with disabilities. So yes, got a beautiful student, Cody Lee, which most of you would know, and I've got that experience of teaching students that has hearing impairment. So I've got students that actually can't hear or are using hearing aids to help. So there's a lot of questions that a lot of teachers have been asking me in regards to how do you teach students with disability, and I know some of you are not a fan of the word disability, so we'll call it physically challenged students.
Not
So
necessarily. I think the term here is probably just learning differences. So they have
yeah,
a different way of learning. Yeah, it may
yeah,
not may necessarily be a physical, difference. So I think the word physical may not be quite all encompassing. So
yeah.
anyway, but I know what you're saying.
Different
It's
people, yeah,
the
different people
the
have got
word
different
disability
perspectives.
is very negative. So we almost don't want to be using
Absolutely.
that word when we describe students that are different. They just have different
Yeah,
ways of learning.
absolutely.
So learning differences, we call them students with learning differences. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I love that. Learning differences. Now,
Hmm.
before we get into that, so we're talking about how we teach students in that particular category. Um, for myself, I don't like to categorize them in that regard, but anyway, besides the point. Now,
Yeah.
before we get into that, Yiyi, would you like to introduce yourself? I know you just moved from California to back to New Zealand. What can we know? What can the listeners know about you? Because it's always so far been Cody Lee, but I want to know
Right.
you as a teacher.
Well, the first thing I want to know is I am no expert in this topic, so I don't, want to come across as being somebody who's an expert in this field. I definitely am not. All I'm able to do is share my experiences from, being Cody's teacher. So that's the first point I want to make. Well, about myself. Well, I was born in Taiwan. I moved to New Zealand when I was 14, and I studied here in Christchurch at the University of Canterbury. Then I got married and I moved to the States. And I lived in New York for about 5 years. And then I moved to California for about 17 years. Maybe not quite that long.
Showing your age, is it?
I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I've been in the States for a long time. So just very recently, in July of this year, I moved from California back to New Zealand. So I would say I did have a pretty successful career before I moved to the States in New Zealand already. So it was a very big change for me to give up everything here and to move to the States to be with my husband. But I did it, and then so it was a rebuild. I think many of us probably have had that experience at some point of our lives. And then anyway, everything worked out. So, and then I had to rebuild again in New York, and then career changes for my husband. We moved to California. So my longest career teaching wise has been in California. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So leaving California was a big change. Cause,
It would have, but
yeah.
like we were talking about it just now, like we were
Mm-hmm.
saying, how COVID has actually helped us teachers with the move. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
don't lose our entire students because we were forced to teach
Mm-hmm.
virtually, and now it's a long time,
Yeah.
it's a thing to move forward with, really.
it's interesting you mentioned that because I grew up in New Zealand, so this really is my home, as well. But so when we first thought about moving back to New Zealand, that was pre-COVID. So I thought I would lose my entire studio. I had to rebuild all over again, just like I had to do the previous times. And then COVID hit, so our move had to be delayed. So then, as you said, it's a silver lining, really. So because of COVID, everybody started doing lessons online. So as it turned out, I was able to keep a lot of my students, the majority of them, including Cody, even after my move back to New Zealand. So it all worked out, and I'm happy that I can still stay in touch with them very easily.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
And
that's
the
a little
thing
bit
is,
on myself, I guess.
no, that's brilliant. Look, what we're doing here is more of like, as you say, we're sharing experiences. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, I myself am not an expert of teaching,
Mm-hmm.
you know, certain students in certain categories. It's more
Mm-hmm.
of us as teachers being very sensitive
Mm-hmm.
in how we can shape our lessons to suit the students
Mm-hmm.
itself. So how old did you start teaching Cody, if you don't mind me asking?
How old was I? I
No,
don't
how
know.
old was Cody?
Oh,
How
how
old
old
was
was
Cody?
Cody? Okay. I think he was in the last couple years of high school. Um,
Oh,
Let me think. I know that I started teaching him very shortly after I gave birth to my daughter. So my daughter is turning 7 soon. So I've taught him for, let's just say, about 7 years, or close to 7 years.
so he
And
was a
I'm
later learner than a
oh no,
rather
but
than
he
a.
he had other teachers for sure. So before he came to me, he had already had gone through several well, I don't know how many exactly, but I wasn't his first piano teacher, that's for sure. And um, because he's a savant, so a lot of what he could do, he self-taught. So yeah, he had other teachers, but he also self-taught for the most part. So he's different from other students that are blind, just because he has extraordinary memory and extraordinary ear. So in a way, that makes him very, very special. And
He uses other senses rather than
yes,
us with the sight.
yeah. So I had, before I taught him, I had not even had heard of the word savant. I didn't even know what it meant. So I had to
So
look
what
it
is
up.
yeah, what is savant? Tell us.
Again, I probably don't have the exact definition right, but it's basically somebody who could do something extraordinarily well without, the proper length of training that most people would have had to have in order to achieve the outcome. So I guess to put into a more common word, let's just call it a genius.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
prodigy.
Protege, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So of course they would they would need some basic training, but they can take off very quickly from that point. Yeah.
Okay. So like I know of a teacher myself that is
Mhm.
also teaching a blind student, and
Mhm.
she's just finished, actually 5 years ago that girl finished her diploma,
Mhm.
her
Right.
music examination on diploma. And
Mhm.
I was listening to it because back then I was still young.
Mhm.
And it's more of the touch, isn't it? It's recognizing
Mhm.
where everything is on the piano
Mhm.
itself. But I know
Mhm.
since Cody is a transfer student for yourself, like
Mhm.
how did that work when you first started with him?
This is after afterwards I found out. So I guess I had already established some sort of a reputation in California. So when Cody's mom first approached me, and I don't even remember this. This is afterwards, after he became all famous and all. She told me this story. So they had approached me, kind of like an email inquiry, like, my son is, autistic and blind. Would you be able to help him, and can he come to your studio? So I do not even remember this. I think at the time I was like, well, I had no experience in this field at all. I do not feel like I'm the right teacher for you. So I didn't accept him. Can you
I know,
believe it?
I remember. No, I completely understand. Like for my first deaf student,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually really anxious and nervous because
Mm-hmm.
it's like yourself, we're not been trained in this kind of area,
Mm-hmm.
and to be like, how am I supposed to teach a deaf student? Yeah, fair enough,
Uh-huh.
they've got hearing aids, But the thing is, even the hearing aids, we've got to
Mm-hmm.
understand the volume of how the hearing aid
Yeah.
works and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was so scared and nervous. I'm like, oh. But at
So,
that time, I was building my studio, so I was like, yeah, sure.
mm-hmm. So again, this is all sort of something that I found out about this all afterwards. So I guess I turned her down. So like, because I was afraid that I didn't have any experience at all teaching a blind student and also autistic, not just
Autistic.
blind but autistic as well. So I didn't feel I was qualified. So I didn't accept the challenge, I guess. But then, like I said, right after my daughter was born, another student of mine said, well, we have this. They share the same dance teacher. So this other student, her name was Riley, and Cody share the same dance teacher through a local dance studio. So I guess he was looking to change teacher again. So they went to Sarah, the teacher. For some reason, maybe they thought she might have contacts. So then Sarah knew about Riley taking lessons from me. So it was through another layer of contact that they approached me once again. So this time, maybe I was just, I don't know, older and wiser. I thought to myself, maybe that is a challenge for me. As teachers, I think it's important to always keep learning. So I thought, okay, I'll at least meet with him, and see what I can do. Because you just never know, right? So this time, but I didn't connect that I was the same person, if you know what I mean, right? I didn't make the
Yeah.
connection. So it was afterwards, Cody's mom told me that they had approached me even before that time that I had, agreed to meet with them. So anyway, this time around, I did meet with him, and then it just took off from there. Does that make sense?
Okay, wow. No, it does. Wow.
So
I can relate.
Yeah, so I think the first, I don't know, what shall we call it, is because I don't think many people can say that that's all they've taught in their career, students with learning differences. Most of us come across these students sometime in our career path, and then we build experience from that. So be open, I guess, to these challenges. And, after you meet with them, if you truly don't feel like things click, of course, you can always refer them on and say no then. But I just feel like, wow, that's just quite amazing that, eventually we did connect somehow. So
It's meant to be, and you're meant to be his teacher. No, look, it happens. Like, some, like, I've turned away students as well, and then a few years later they contact me, and like yourself, I wouldn't have known that I actually turned them the way previously. But it worked out well, and I have also myself taught some of my students. But I guess, like, honestly, for myself, I don't really like to categorize students between disability and whatever.
Exactly.
It's more of us as teachers being sensitive in catching how a student learns, whether or not they're visual learners, audio learners, or how we explain things to them, whether or not we explain it differently, and things like that. Because I think students, they all learn differently, but they're all kind of the same as well. So in Cody's position, it's more of understanding how he learns without, like, you won't be able to go, all right, from bar or measure 35, let's play it from there. It's very different. And for my deaf students, it's understanding, like, it's understanding how the hearing aid works as well. And for me, it's like yourself, I think the same thing. It's completely watching them to see how they actually process things. So I mean, Cody, since he can't see, it's more of his body language, I'm assuming, that the way that you look at how he learns. But like for my deaf students, it's more of how I see how their eyes work in regards to how they see things. For my deaf students, I teach them how to be sensitive in regards to the vibration of the sound as well, just in case the hearing aids are not adjusted properly. But yeah. So how has it been? Like, do you play a piece and then he kind of memorizes it, or when you
I think most
him?
people just are very curious how he learns. So as I was saying, so then Riley's mom told me, our dance teacher has this student who is a musical savant and he wants to come to your studio.
He
So
sings? He plays the piano and he dances?
Yeah, he's an amazing tap dancer. He's very,
Wow,
very good.
really? Oh my
In fact, he
gosh.
tried out America's Got Talent with his tap dancing skills before the singing.
Oh,
So that,
really?
yeah, so he definitely is amazing as a tap dancer too. But you can go to his Facebook page. He sometimes posts little snippets of him doing his tap dancing. So anyway, so she said, oh, he's a musical savant. He wants to come to your studio. So I didn't know, right, what it meant. So long story short, I just said, okay, let's just meet. It's all very well talking about this and that, but I think unless you meet with the student, you have to establish that connection. The description in words, they don't tell you enough or anything really. So I met with him. So I still remember the first piece he played for me. So basically, when you get a transfer student, if they already know something, right, you would just simply ask them to play, right? So you would know their current, where they are at currently in terms of, what kind of repertoire they're working on. So he played for me the Debussy Arabesque, the first one. So, and that's not a beginner's piece, right? It's rather, late intermediate, let's call it, right? So I was already quite impressed, knowing that he couldn't see, and also he's autistic. I had taught a few autistic students before Cody, but not to that extent, because of course it's a spectrum. The autistic students that I had taught, they can still carry a conversation, and you probably wouldn't really know they're autistic until you get to know them for more. But Cody is what do you call it? Non-speaking autistic. So he doesn't really carry like a conversation like you and I do. He may once you keep talking to him a little bit more, but so to put it into, I guess, simpler words, highly autistic. Is that a
Okay.
term? Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
his
yeah. So,
autism
yeah.
is more intense, let's just say. So, but he absolutely understands everything you say. He may not be able to express himself verbally, in like the way you and I have a conversation, but he absolutely understands everything you say. So, and that was very obvious after I go through the piece with him. So if I wanted him to play it a certain way, he would definitely respond. So because he had already pretty much known that piece, I asked him how he learned that piece. And it was basically just by ear. He was just self-taught himself. He self-taught himself that piece, maybe through listening to YouTube videos or whatever. So he was obviously always drawn to classical music. So he would listen to whatever music that he happens to find, and he would just try and play it. So there will be notes missing here and there, especially the inner parts. He would catch the top melody and the bass and the left hand, but he would miss a couple notes here and there. So I would fill him in on those notes, and then that's when I found out he has extraordinary memory. So the piece is not short, so we would go over where he misses this note or that note, and yes, basically I would just play for him whatever note he happened to have missed. And then after the whole piece was mostly covered, I would say, okay, now let's play the whole piece again from the beginning, kind of like how you ask most students to do, to put it all together, back together again. And just I was amazed how much he retained. He basically remembered everything
In one lesson?
and without, of
All
course,
right.
looking at anything. So it was all in his memory. Yeah.
Okay. Look, guys, this doesn't happen to all students, just to let you know. So every student's different. So the way that you do his lessons, is it recorded for him to listen to it back so that he can remember what is missing?
Yes. So that was just the initial meeting. So then I had to basically design a program for him. So we started using the RCM syllabus. So I put him roughly at level 6 at the time, even though the piece is a little bit beyond level 6. But just to cover grounds and to make sure that there's no holes, we started with the level 6 RCM So we did technique, we did scales, all the technical requirements in the repertoire. But then very quickly we moved on, to more advanced piano literature. So yes, everything he ever plays, I play for him first. And I did ask, obviously for blind students, most people would think of Braille music. So I did ask, if he knew any Braille. And Tina, his mom, basically said they've tried it, done it, not interested. So he knows Braille and he can type in Braille. And he does know Braille music. But I think it's too slow for him. If he can just listen to something once, and it takes 5 seconds to learn, he's not interested. He just doesn't want to. And also, I don't know, how advanced Braille music gets. So I think he was bored. He was bored with the Braille music, and he didn't feel like it gave him enough. So he wasn't interested. And I did make it clear to them that I, do not do Braille, do not know how it works, have no idea. So
it was more of a suggestion.
So no, if that's what, but I wanted to make sure that they knew it was available. And he did. He already was, he had been there. I think he had gone to a teacher that taught Braille, but the music was too elementary. It was just too easy for him, so he lost interest.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, his mom sounds like an amazing person. She's very intuitive in regards to Cody's, and very encouraging. So that's amazing too. So it's a combination of that on all your parts, I think.
Definitely his mom is instrumental. She went out of her way to find every resource possible. I mean, just the fact that she had contacted me, prior, and then again the second time, even after I already said no, I thought that was just amazing. That she was definitely always looking out for Cody and finding, every possible resource that was available to help him. So, yeah, Tina is amazing.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's like so in regards to autism, because I think everyone tends to freak out. Like everyone freaks out when they deal with autistic kids to begin with. But you now have an autistic kid and a blind kid, that's like double whammy in its sense. In the autism related, I'm just looking it up. Yes, that's what we're saying is 3 levels of autism, but the way that you're explaining Cody is more of he responses, isn't it? It's not like he acts out, he responses, but it's just the communication is not very high.
Just like to put everything into words, but he knows what you're saying, and he can express it through other means, through especially music. And I think if he were to perhaps write it down in a written format, right? I think he's able to do that. But just the speaking part, the verbal expression part, that's something that is part of his autism. So, but it doesn't matter because I don't talk to him any differently. And that's the one thing I think I've learned is that you don't have to talk to them any differently. And Tina also mentioned it to me that she liked that even if I'm talking about something that is very in depth, I don't feel like, oh gee, what if he doesn't understand what I'm saying? That never crosses my mind. I just still talk to him as if though he was a regular student, and he absorbs it all, and he loves it. So he doesn't like, I don't know what's the right way to describe it, to be talked down to. Does that make sense? Like
no, absolutely.
Yeah, some I think some people might feel like, well, since their communication is limited, maybe you just have to use very simple words to describe something. You don't have to.
Oh, okay.
So I've never done that. I've always just used whatever language or terms or terminology that I would have used anyways with my other students. So in our lessons, I talk more for sure, just because he doesn't talk back to me. So I'm the one doing most of the talking. But he loves it, and he does get it, and I think it fuels him. he loves
Yeah,
to
I
absorb
the difference
information.
I
Yeah.
think is the fact that
Hmm.
he listens and he actually
Yeah.
processes it. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
happen to all students.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. Sometimes some students, the more you talk, the more confused they get. So it really
That,
depends, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
every student is different. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the thing with the
Hmm.
explaining, like, it's amazing to hear that with you explaining and talking to him like normal,
Hmm.
it's like, wow, but sometimes we have to see if a student
Hmm.
actually understands the first
Hmm.
way we explain. If they don't understand the
Hmm.
first way we explain, it's just more of changing the way we explain things
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
to suit them because
Hmm.
everybody's brain works differently. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now I think the next question is going to be really interesting for some of us. Like,
Hmm.
since you've changed into the whole realm of virtual teaching, and I know you
Hmm.
still, as you mentioned just now, you're still teaching Cody virtually.
Hmm.
How does that work? I mean, it will be easier now considering you've taught him physically, and now
Hmm.
it's virtual. But how has that worked for you?
I think the transition for him is minimal even compared to other students because he never could see me anyway, even when I was next to him. So it's not like he could ever have seen my hands or my fingers. So he was always listening to me, even when I was just physically next to him. So I think the difference for him is absolutely minimal. But with my regular students, sometimes they miss being able to see me very close. I mean, with Zoom, I have multiple cameras, but still, it's different, I guess, for some of them to be able to be very physically close to me and be able to see my hands and my fingers. But for Cody, he never was able to see me to begin with. So that's why I think the transition for him was very easy.
Easy.
Yeah. Hmm. And also we already did virtual lessons for a while before I moved back to New Zealand because he moved to Las Vegas. So he wasn't
Oh,
even in California for a whole year. So after he had won the AGT, he moved to Las Vegas. So he has a show there every
wow.
three
I
days a
should check
week or
him out when
something.
I'm there.
Yeah, 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I can't remember the deal, but he's the what do you call it, resident artist at the Luxor Casino and Hotel. So he lives there. So he already moved there at least a year, maybe a year and a half before I moved back to New Zealand. So we already started doing the lessons online.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming Tina would be having a camera so that you can monitor his hands and his.
Yeah, he just has what most people have, just one regular camera with
Yeah.
the side view like I have now. Yeah, I'm the one that has multiple camera, but for other students, not really for him because he can see anyway. So for him, he didn't need the extra cameras. But I try to make sure that I have a very good microphone so that my sound is clear, because sound is critical here, especially
Absolutely.
for Cody. Everything he learns is by sound. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So
he has a
would
good microphone too, so we have a very good sound connection wise. Yeah.
now with him working with other artists,
Hmm.
are you aware of how he works with other artists or has
Not very much. Not very much. I know he does the tap dancing with Sarah, and then he has a few vocal coaches that helps him with the singing, developing his voice and technique. But I don't really liaise with them all that much. I know sometimes who they are and just through his Facebook postings, but not sort of in consultation. If that's what you're
okay.
referring to,
So
yeah.
so
Hmm.
with him, like, because you said that he loves classical music, but like from all the posts that I've seen, it's a variation of the different genres.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you cover the different genres in his lesson or
Not very much. Sometimes he would show me something that he's preparing, especially early in when he was auditioning. Um, he was going through a few pieces to decide which piece to go for. So those pieces we did go over, and then if he had selected a particular piece, then I would help him with like finding the right chord for a particular passage, the right pattern of accompaniment, introduction, sort of, what to do to fill up the empty measures and where the voice is not doing that very much. So that was in the initial stages when he was, getting ready to do the audition. So eventually we picked a song that we felt was very appropriate, that showed
Got it.
his range. But
But before that was all classical in a sense.
yeah, so most of our lessons are just based on classical literature. And also after he won the competition, he's on his own with all of that. So I didn't help him with any of that stuff. And now I think he has, of course, many people in the AGT team, right?
Absolutely.
When they do a show, they help him with choosing, or I don't know if he has input in what he wants, what song he's going to be singing that night. But I have nothing to do with that. So we still only do classical stuff.
Okay.
So just very pretty recent, I guess. I think was it right before I moved, he did the RCM level 10 exam. He did it online, through the
Okay, so
RCM.
for those of you that don't know what RCM is, Royal College of Music, isn't it?
Royal Conservatory.
Oh, conservatory. Okay, and
Royal
that is based
Conservatory. In Canada.
Canada. That's right.
Yeah,
RCM.
Toronto. Yeah.
Canadian.
I think it's Toronto, yeah. So, he did the RCM, and that is very involved. This is a high-level exam. It's not easy. But he scored 92%, which is their highest, 90% or above is first-class honors with distinction. So that's
So do they have sight reading in RCM?
They do, but because of his, he's blind, so they allowed him to do extra ear training. So he did double ear training, which for him is a piece of cake.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the examiner was like, because they test the microphone just to make sure the connection is good. So the examiner, I can't remember what she played, but she would play something like, right? Something like, and then she would say, oh, could you hear that? And most people, I guess, would just say, yes, I could hear it. But in Cody's case, he just played back what she played. So she was very impressed.
Okay. Wow. No, that's amazing. It's amazing to hear, people with that like their disability doesn't stop them from doing or from being such as that itself, And not every disabled, although I don't like to label it, students would be pushed or would push themselves that far to
no, that was something that I felt, he learned a lot from doing it, because he didn't have any problem. Like, you could play, say, a dominant seventh arpeggio, D flat major or whatever to him, and he could play it right back to you, no problem. But to do the exam, he had to understand what those things meant. So it wasn't just a simple playback. He had to physically learn the theory of, okay, what's a dominant seventh? What does that mean? And what's a diminished seventh? And what is the third inversion of a diminished seventh?
That's a lot of memorizing.
So yes, that was a lot of learning for him. But I think he that's the thing about Cody. He likes to learn. He likes to learn new things. He's not put off by something that's challenging. He likes the challenge, so he thrived on it. So even though it was not the easiest thing, because it was a very for lack of a better word, academic, learning the technical names of all those patterns. And for the RCM syllabus, they're big on their technique. The requirement is long to go through all the keys, all the different patterns. It literally is hours and hours of practice time, and also just explaining what each thing meant. And the cadences, the broken chords. Something like starting, not the root position, but only the first inversion, or first inversion followed by all other inversions thereafter.
Absolutely.
Just understanding what all that meant, I think for him, initially, I could tell was a challenge. But through repetition, and that's a key word, through repetition, he learned, okay, this is what he has to do if that is what the examiner says. So,
and that's the thing, it doesn't just apply to him, it applies to all students, where it's repetition of teaching the same materials, be it like for Cody's sense is the listening part, constantly hearing it. For us, it's the same thing with our students, it's constantly listening to it. But the thing is, we've got the extra resource with the paperwork that we have to do with our students. No.
I remember you said something about recording. Yes. So because of that, in the beginning we recorded a lot of his lessons too. So that's definitely a tool that I think is very helpful for teachers, in similar situations where if they can review the materials through recording, it helps a lot. And in the beginning, Cody had lesson every day of the week, and when he first came to my studio. So that was how he was able to progress very quickly because of that repetition, going over the same thing a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Now,
Wow.
of course, he's very busy. So
Too
I
busy. That's
see
right.
maybe once a
He's a
month.
superstar. Yeah, wow. Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear that. And the thing is, although people have labeled them as autistic or highly autistic and things like that, I think it's just every autistic child is different as well. It's I don't like to, like I said many times, I don't really like to label it. Like my current student, she is 7 years old, 6 years old. So I started all my deaf students from the very beginning. So that was a real challenge. And it seems that my deaf students are not only have hearing impairment, but also have a visual problem. So I had to work in that sense of the visual side and the audio side. And for this particular girl, she actually has no ears. So she's got her hearing aids with a band that sticks to her head. And with her wearing glasses, I had to work around with how the glasses impacted the hearing aids and the sound of the violin because it's so close to the hearing aid. The hearing aid tends to buzz. So it's being sensitive in regards to all the aspects for myself with my hearing impaired student.
That's
And
amazing.
and just understanding how she learns, like the way that she learns, she explains it in the longest way possible in regards to how she explains things. And there were a couple of times where the parents would snap at her, like, "Oh, hurry up, just play." So I had to explain to the mom, that's how she thinks, that's her thought process. She thinks differently to us regular people, she needs to hear herself explain things. And how she learns is she explains things in a longer way, but that means that she actually understands it. Like for yours, Cody doesn't say anything at all, But for her, she explains it in a long-winded way, and then you're like, oh yeah,
Okay.
she actually understands it. So it's being sensitive with that, and they do want to excel. It's not that they don't want to excel. It's every single student, whether or not they're disabled or not, they want to excel, and it's more of whether or not us as teachers and them connects. Like you said, if we don't click with our students, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they click with another teacher, and it's okay.
Yeah. So
So
it's really that first meeting, establishing a connection, a chemistry, and then just like even if the student was what we call a typical student, not every teacher is the right teacher for every one of those typical students anyways. So it's
absolutely,
no different. Yeah.
yeah.
But I think
So
that
would you?
willingness to try, yeah, and just accept the
Absolutely.
challenge.
That's right. So I explain to parents, if it does, if I don't think sometimes I say I don't think we suit each other, maybe you should find a different teacher. Maybe that will work better. Rather than they're not the good musicians, too bad, kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
yeah, we as teachers have to understand that we are all different characteristics as well as teachers. And the thing is, with all the different characteristics of the students out there, you have to think there's some people in your lifestyle that you won't want to hang out with, right? Like this is a normal thing. So what makes you think that every student is going to suit for yourself? Like
Exactly.
I have accepted that fact that we're all different, and sometimes
Yeah.
the way we communicate with the students, and sometimes students communicate with us, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's going to be some other teacher out there that will be better. So like
Exactly.
Tina, going through a whole lot of teachers to find that's the whole process of it. It's trial and error. It's finding what suits you.
Yeah.
So it's all a trying process. But no, it's amazing. It's amazing how you, Tina, and Cody have all come together in making this work. And it's a job I love doing as well, as I'm sure that you love doing as well.
I'm fascinated because I've never taught a deaf student, so I'm really fascinated by what you're saying. And I guess you do have to teach those students in person, right? Because it definitely, I don't see how it could work on Zoom.
No, it has. So it has in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes where I have the mom be present there, but I tell the mom, I say, it's between me and the student. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you need to point, you need to point. If not, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But I don't use Zoom. I use musicology. So the
I
sound
see.
is sharper. It's
Mm-hmm.
quicker in that
Mm-hmm.
response. It is a challenge, I
Mm-hmm.
can say, with the technology, with
Mm-hmm.
teaching virtually with a deaf student, but it
Mm-hmm.
works,
That's amazing.
so I would wait till the rest part. Then I'm like, okay, stop. Because you can't tell them to
So
stop.
I guess it's like autism. It is a spectrum where the degree of deafness matters, right? In this case, so if they are completely deaf, I just I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see how it could work. But if they still are able to hear, especially with hearing aids, then I can see how. Yeah.
Look, this student of mine is
Mm-hmm.
completely deaf.
Wow.
Yeah, so she
So how
relies
does
on
she
her
even
hearing aids.
hear you talk? Because she can't
Hearing
hear.
aids.
So the hearing aids allows her to hear
Yeah.
your conversation. I see.
Yeah,
Wow.
without the hearing aids,
Mm-hmm.
she can hear. So I have to be
Mm-hmm.
very sensitive in regards to the hearing aids. Like
Mm-hmm.
I hear the hearing aids buzz, and that's because the
Mm-hmm.
frequency of the sound from the violin is too
Mm-hmm.
loud. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to be, sometimes she forgets to tell her mom to change the battery. So before my lesson, I'm like, is it fully charged? And she's like, oh, I forgot to change my battery. Kids
Uh-huh.
are not gonna
I
remember.
see. See,
So
I just have definitely have no experience teaching deaf students,
yeah,
so I'm fascinated. Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
can
then
see how most people, if they've never taught a blind student, will be fascinated by how I teach Cody. So,
absolutely,
but
absolutely,
before I had no idea either. So after
yeah.
Cody, I did teach a few other people, that are visually impaired. So because they
I was gonna say, like, would
yeah.
you take any more?
So after Cody, I definitely had more experience then, and also people would approach me, because they know that I already have experience teaching, blind students. So, um, but definitely, for those students that suppose they're just blind, but they're not autistic, then the communication is they would be able to converse, normally, uh,
Yeah,
so, but the memory, right? If they don't have the visual, the audio memory like Cody, then the progress is definitely a lot slower. So not everybody, progresses the way he does.
yeah,
So
but it's the same as any other
yeah.
student. It's
Mm-hmm.
training them to have better memory in that sense.
Yeah.
But I guess the senses for different students will be different. So if it's a
Mm-hmm.
virtually impaired student,
Mm-hmm.
virtually, yes, virtually,
Visually,
visually, visually,
yeah.
visually impaired student, then their other senses will be heightened, isn't it? Like the
Mm-hmm.
hearing side will be better, I'm assuming.
I think it just all differs. Yeah. So most of them would have very good ears, but whether they remember, as much or as quickly. So but that's when the recordings are still absolutely essential. So for the
Absolutely.
students, that because I mean most of us, how much can you really remember after one hearing? Not much, right? So they would have to repeatedly hear the music. So the recording is essential in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
in
Well,
that regard.
so
Mm-hmm.
for myself with my other hearing impaired student,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't like to wear his hearing aid. So
Okay.
he can hear very minimal without his hearing aid, but he doesn't like to
Mm-hmm.
wear his hearing aid was because at that time, and he was in his early teens. That was
Mm-hmm.
because he was bullied in school for having hearing
Mm-hmm.
aids.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes he would purposely not bring his hearing aids to a lesson. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, I had to maximize my lesson as much as possible because he
Mm-hmm.
loved playing music and he does have that
Mm-hmm.
talent. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that hearing aid problem that we needed to go get around to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's teaching him to sense the vibration.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes he would play super loud with
Mm-hmm.
his violin because he was also a violin player. He would play super
Mm-hmm.
loud because he can't hear it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's teaching him, like Cody, he's receptive of it. So
Mm-hmm.
when you explain something, he picks up
Mm-hmm.
very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's teaching them the vibration. So it's not complete reliance on the
Mm-hmm.
the hearing aid itself. It's more
Right.
of the vibration of how they create the instrument, the music. And with
Right.
the violin, you can feel the vibration a bit more than the piano because it's there, and you can feel the
Right.
vibration on your hand with the bow.
Because
So
you're
it
right,
is.
like the instruments on your body, you can feel it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
uh,
I find it really, like yourself, I find it fascinating, and
mm,
if I do get another disabled student, I would open my arms. I'm like, yeah, sure. It's a challenge, as you said, and
yeah.
it's it's finding ways on how to teach them. It's like any other student. It's finding ways on to make it work for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
wow,
And there's definitely not one set path. I think,
definitely.
I think if a student was blind, but not necessarily autistic, and not necessarily a savant, then I can see how Braille music could work for them. Just because they're gonna learn more traditionally in terms of progress, more systematic, kind of like method books. They move so slowly, but they cover every little aspect. So I could
Okay,
see that
so
work. Yeah.
I personally have not heard of Braille music until you
Uh
just
huh.
mentioned it, and I'm assuming that a lot of our listeners will be on the same boat. Do you want to explain what Braille music is?
Well, they feel it with their fingers. So it's
Oh,
like
right.
reading in Braille. So, little things pop out of paper. So
Rather than notes.
yeah, well, they
Oh,
represent notes in a way.
yeah.
So but like I said, not that I know anything really about it, but I had at least heard of Braille music. So I did mention to Tina, has, you know, is that something that he wants to do or has he done it? Because I am no expert in it. So if that's something that they want to look into, then I absolutely would not be the right teacher for them. So that's why I mentioned it. But they had done. He does know how to read Braille music, and they had done it, but he was not interested. He felt the material was too simple for him. The
Okay.
music was too boring. Playing
Yeah.
just
So
he
just to
wanted
fast
more.
track things, let's
Yeah,
just
he
do by
wanted
memory.
more. He wanted to play more advanced literature more quickly. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But I could see just from working with other students that are blind but not a musical savant like Cody, that Braille could work for them. Just so that eventually, but it does move slowly. But that's okay. Not everybody has to become a level 10 in 2 years or 3 years. So that's okay too. So that could work for them for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but it's the
Yeah.
same as any other technique book, as you said. It's trial and error and seeing what suits
Yeah.
for the student.
But for
If
Cody, you could play a piece of music in its entirety for him, and after one hearing, he would be able to basically replicate the piece for you. Maybe not note for note, but he would have the outline of the piece. He
like the
would,
whole thing.
yeah, the outline of it at least. And depends on the
Wow.
complexity of the piece. You know, the things that are missing will be different. So let's just say it's a classical sonata. That's straightforward for him. That's just melody with accompaniment. That kind of thing is easy for him. But when you get into romantic literature with chromatic harmony, or impressionist music, for example, Debussy, that becomes more abstract, and then it'll be harder for him to fill in the intricate changes, the inner voices. So he would not be able to reproduce it, say 90% back to you after one try or one hearing. So then we work on those details. But for most people that are just blind students, they cannot do that. So then they need something much, much more systematic. So then the Braille music could help. But it would
Yeah.
take them a very, very long time to get to
Longer.
the point where they can play, a very,
Yeah.
a very advanced repertoire. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
impressed by all of you. Like, it's not just the teacher or the mom, it's also
Mm-hmm.
Cody in its sense.
Yeah,
Like,
he works very
that's his
hard.
interest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, it's every single party working hard on it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned just now that he used to have a lesson every single day.
Yeah. Of the
And that
week.
doesn't man, if all our students were like that, like
Yeah.
what?
And right before his exam, we would definitely record every single lesson. We used to post his lessons on Facebook all the time, and then you know, because he's so famous now. We want to respect his privacy a little bit, so we didn't do that as much. We're starting to do it more now, just because people love to see him, you know, and watch how he learns. But right before his exam, we would record his lessons all the time, and whether he has time to review them or not, I don't know. So I don't chase it up with him. But sometimes I would get busy and I would forget to send the recording. And then Tina would say, "Oh, Cody is asking for the recording. He wants to review the material because he wants to do well in the exam." So yeah, he would remember, because the pieces are very complex. They're not easy pieces. So he would want to make sure that he doesn't just give me the outline of the piece, that he gives me everything, every little detail in every
Perfection
measure.
is in its
Yeah.
sense, isn't it?
So then he would ask for those recordings, and even when I forget to send them or when I get too busy, and then Tina would say, "Well, Cody wants to listen to the recording from last week's lesson." So I know he works hard, and you know,
it makes it easy for you as a
Mhm.
teacher, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what does he have to prove? Nothing. He's already, you know, a superstar. He doesn't need this exam, but he knows he can learn something from it, so he wants to do it. So that's kind of what inspires me too as a teacher. That, you know, he likes to learn new things. He likes to challenge himself. I mean, he
No,
doesn't
that's
need any of
beautiful.
this. Yeah, but
Absolutely,
he
absolutely.
enjoys it still.
Yeah. Now I know we were talking a lot, guys. So if you want to have any questions for either myself or Yiyi, please do post your questions, or if not, you can contact me or Yiyi directly. We're always open for questions. I mean, this is just our experience, and we can only but share our experience. It's more of,
Mm-hmm.
I think, you yourself trying it out, really. Yeah, trying it out with the students. It's just I mean, all students learn differently, but they also all learn the same way. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
more of how you as a teacher, how quickly or how responsive you are in regards to how the student learns to
Mm-hmm.
suit, you know, their way of learning, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing to hear about Cody's learning journey. So yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Now, I know we talked a lot about the hearing impairment and the visual
Mm-hmm.
impairment. What about the autistic side of it? Like, have you had experience a lot in that autistic manner? You said you had a lot of mild ones, but not as high as
Yes,
Cody.
so definitely, again, it's a spectrum. So I've taught more, I guess, autistic students than I've taught blind students. But Cody is the only one that's both. Yeah, but the autistic student, I think patience is key. You know, you have to be very patient, and it's something I've learned also more and more as I get older.
As a
Um,
parent as well, right?
yes. So when I was a younger teacher, I definitely was not as patient. You know, I want immediate results. But now, you know, I understand, right, that some kids just need more time, and that's okay. You know, that's okay if they have to play the same piece for 10 weeks, even. It's okay. So I
Or
think
6 months. It's,
patience is definitely key when it comes to autistic, you know, teaching autistic students. But also know that they are all different. Some of them don't mind the repetition and thrive on the repetition, but some can be absolutely the opposite. You know, they don't want to play the same things. They do like the variety. They do like something different, but you know, structure also I think is important, so they know what to expect next. You know, so always start with this, and then this, and then this, and then this. So just have to try different ways, you know, with
it's
each
not one
autistic
method fits
student.
all. It's not one
Exactly,
lesson
yeah.
fits all.
So if
Mm.
you find that they get frustrated playing the same things over and over, then don't expect everything to be perfect. Just move on, you know, so that they don't lose interest. But if you find that, hey, they don't mind, in fact, they love it, they like to work on the same things, then work on the same things until it's, you know, all the details are there. So everybody's different. Yeah.
Mm.
But I do find that absolutely and they, I think, are highly sensitive and intuitive. They can sense more than a lot of kids. So, you know, if you genuinely, you know, have the desire to teach them and help them, and genuinely care and genuinely want to be there for them, they sense it and they respond. So they're just very, you know, highly perceptive to unspoken you know what I mean, emotions, just how we feel. So if you feel the slightest bit of annoyance or negative feeling, they will sense it. So
So would you say they're more sensitive than an average student? Because I find
yes, for
students.
sure,
Oh, right.
for
Okay.
sure, yeah, for
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Because I find all my students are very sensitive in that sense anyway.
But they are
It's
more
just
so. They are definitely more so.
uh,
Yeah. That's how my experience have taught me anyway. They are definitely more sensitive. So, just being just extra love, extra love and extra patience, and have them feel that you genuinely are there for them. I think that's key.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
before.
No, just now I remember you saying, I'm laughing because I remember you saying before we like you wouldn't have any patience. It's myself as well. It's like, come on, why can't you get it? But no, I must admit as well myself. It's a yeah, it's learning that huge amount of patience. Like I used to be a
Yeah.
classroom teacher. I'm still a classroom teacher, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still a conductor as well. I take a lot of ensembles with primary school kids. So a group of 50 kids, a group of 20 kids, and it's just being patient and getting them,
Yeah.
to be in the moment, to be in the zone of learning, but also, making things fun for myself. But yeah, it's a lot of patience. I think
Yeah,
that
and
we've
also
learned as
now I'm a
teachers.
mom, so yeah, you're right. That changes things. So
Yeah,
I'm a very different teacher than I was 20 years ago. That's for sure. A better one. Thank goodness.
absolutely. No,
But
absolutely.
we
And
learn from every student we've ever taught too. So
absolutely. And that
I
was what I
I
was gonna say.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate every single student that has ever come to my studio, because I've learned something from every single one of them.
And it's a continuous learning process for us
Yeah.
as teachers as well as the students. So it's not that, we've got our degree and master's and PhD and that's it. It's like we do learn from every single student because every
Yeah.
single student is different. We learn how to change the way we explain things, how the way
Yeah.
that we teach different students. So yeah, no, it's amazing. And that's what I love. Like I love continuously learning from my students as well as teaching them all this knowledge that we have in regards to the instrument and the music itself. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Well, thanks, Yiyi, for coming on. I'm so excited that you are finally here and we could finally share this in regards to this particular topic. Like this really means a lot to me that you were here and that we were able to speak about this because it is a high thing in my books in regards to all students learning experience, be it if they are physically challenged or what. So like to me all students are all the same, it's just that they learn differently, and I think teachers, us as teachers, we need to kind of understand that. And I think the key as the last would be to be patient
Yeah.
and just try. Yeah.
Yeah, and extra love from the heart.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Now if anyone would like to reach out to you, would you be open for them to reach out to you?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
All right,
Always.
brilliant. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get your contact details and I will put that up on the post. So if
Okay.
anyone would like to reach out to you personally in regards to your journey, or maybe they want to connect with you and see your journey with what you've done, as well as what I